This is Power 102 Digital Monday. Welcome to Hard Talk with host Karen Nunez Tesheira.
Oh,
And
got a
today,
different name today, Karen. Oh, I like that.
good afternoon, Karen. Let me see if I'm hearing you today.
Yeah, are you hearing me? I'm hearing you.
Yes, I'm hearing you loud and clear.
I checked it before I came on, but I don't know what I don't know what we did, but we whatever we did, it worked.
Great, great.
Yes. So get
Welcome,
on
welcome.
to first of all as always, good afternoon to our listeners all over the world. We get calls, and we know that people listen in different parts of the world, and we're so happy for that. Um, we miss Denise, but Denise has, I believe, her own show, and I think that's only right. She's got no experience and so on, and uh, I'm happy for her and wish her the best. We go on with our hard talk with, I think, the best of the best as my support system, always there. He smiles, but it's so true. David McIntyre, he, no matter what time I don't call him at indecent hours, but I do call him at, I think, times when it's not really convenient to him. Let me put it that way. And he certainly keeps his voice always the same modality. I have to learn to do that myself a little bit. But first of all, I do think that we're really happy to have you on. And what we want you to, we're going to call it today. Next week, we hope to have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful guest. I can't wait. Trying to work out the modalities, as they say, or the logistics of that.
Yeah.
As more of a time logistics. But I'm sure if we are able to get the person who is quite, I was pleased to know, was happy to be on the show. I hope to have them on because I try very hard. This is on the Bacchanal show, not in any disrespect to anybody else. I'm using it in its local parlance because you know the word Bacchanal. I found out when I was in Form 5, by the way, when I was doing a play on Keats, one of Keats' things for Form 5 literature. He said, Bacard and his parts. And all the class said, Bacchanal? But I thought that was our word. He said, no, he is the Lord of revelry and a good time. So I'm sorry, Trinidadians, we cannot say or take ownership. We don't have any IP in the word Bacchanal. I feel when we don't. I have a feeling when we use it, it's not the same way as Keats and those literary, minds in England used it. But our show really is for people who would like to hear a point of view that hopefully is not um, steeped in trying to deal with data and facts. And hopefully at the end of the day, it's not to tell you how to think, because I think I would always remember, as I've said it on other occasions, Lloyd Best, I had the opportunity to teach me at two levels when I did international relations and when I did my MBA, my executive MBA. And I had that distinct pleasure of having him teach at both occasions. And I was pretty close to him. We got on very well. And one of the things he always would talk about is critical thinking. So my job or my role here is certainly not to tell you what to think, but this is really to maybe fill in some gaps, fill in some holes, and then leave it up to you to be able to make your own assessment, which hopefully will be free of would guided by one major consideration: love of country and the future you're leaving for your children and grandchildren. If that's going to be your what you call your North Star, you can't get a better North Star than that. And for me, that's my North Star. So without much more ado, I already have the comments, and feel free to call.
Mhm.
And I think, David, you could put up the numbers. But I also want you to feel absolutely free to just don't be disrespectful or abusive. We don't need to go down that road. I won't be, you won't be. But at the same point in time, you are absolutely free to say that I don't agree with you. I don't think you're right. I think you have a whatever. And the fact is saying you are absolutely free to do that. And in fact, at the end of the day, I think all of us will come out the better for it. So I want you to use the comments section. Those who listen on Yahoo, those who, because we stream live, listening on 102, or any media or forum you're using, I want you to really feel free to be part of the conversation, we make your contribution, and we will embrace it, I can assure you. So, David, you could want to put up the numbers.
Yes, I will. Let me let them know. Um, you can call in at 222-8255, 222-8255, or at our toll-free number, 866-525-1099, toll-free, 866-525-1099. And like Karen said, you can send in your comments via Facebook or YouTube, because we are streaming live on Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah, and we do appreciate, we appreciate our persons who make contributions, and I think it was a Mr. Yalsing, what's her name, Joycelyn Yalsing. And
Yes.
I get it right? Yeah, I
Yes.
see.
Yes.
Well, so dementia I hasn't set in. But we appreciate that. And there's a gentleman in particular, he puts up his name, so I don't think I'm wrong to say, I think it's Albert Montano. I think
Yes.
Albert, I know, right. But we want other people, you don't have to support, you don't have to be here, so you just have to be a Trinbagonian. That's what you have to be. That's all. Not even that you have to be somebody interested as family here, whatever. So having done that, next week we're gonna hopefully have a guest. And one of the things about having guests is I just don't just like to have a guest to have a guest. I like to have a guest who I think would bring value to the show, and who hopefully you might be surprised, hopefully not, with any political agenda or obvious political agenda. I don't, we're not about that. We're about a love of country. So having given that introduction, what we're going to do today is going to discuss things that affect us in Trinidad and Tobago. And I know I said I would have finished up discussing the Privy Council versus CCJ, but it was really only to give some clarification on what is the basis of what appears to be, especially in the criminal law, because that's what affects us a lot. Murder cases, those types of cases, and now the bail for murder. And I think there was some, but I don't think it's that recent. I think they had an amendment, which instead of having to go for preliminary inquiry before a magistrate, which means you're spending years and years in remand, you're going straight to a judge. And I think at that point in time, the DPP has to prepare his duty now is to prepare, it's not called instructions for the magistrate. In other words, just skipping a step, but not compromising anything. What you're trying to do, I think they're trying to do, what the judiciary is trying to do is, too many people are spending, like Akili Charles. I see the case as him being substituted by someone else. But I didn't see, he was a young man anyhow, ended up spending nearly 10 years of his life, and then eventually being told that, no, we don't find enough evidence from the police for you to stand trial. This is not where you are being charged. You haven't been found liable to stand trial to determine whether you're guilty or not. You're waiting to find out if there is enough for you to stand trial. Imagine 10 years of your life gone, sitting in remand. I mean, if you're not a convict, or it will make you one. The circumstances, you look where they put you in among a pool of people who are probably, had a hard life, and it's just a terrible situation with remand. So I think this thing about skipping that preliminary inquiry, and a preliminary inquiry is where you go before a magistrate, and the attorney representing the defender, the accused, and then you have the state which prosecutes. All prosecutions are done by the state, except unless you get permission from the DPP to do a private prosecution, but that's how it's normally done. And then you'd have to have that hearing, and that takes so much time. So I do think that's a good development that we can see some movement. I think the first case, as also it was reported in the papers, a gentleman who was in remand, I think in January of this year, his matter was heard and he was found not guilty just about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So if that's any indication of what we can expect, that's a good sign. But we're not talking about remand today. And I went off on that topic, but it's all about the whole issue of crime and specifically today, what's happening in Venezuela. I call it an inflection point. It's becoming a very much, one of those words that become very popular, like pivot did about 2 years back. We've reached an inflection point in the sense that two important elections, one has happened and one will happen. They're important globally, yes, but they're extremely important for us in Trinidad and Tobago. And the reason why, there's no real guessing about that. And I could go on to the fact that we should have diversified and we should have, I don't even like to use the diversity. We should have looked at other avenues to earn foreign exchange. That's how I would like to put it. And the opportunities, there were several, they were not taken advantage of. That's the reality, or not taken advantage of in any very meaningful way. So where we have ourselves, many, many years later, we have over 100 years in this business, what we have ourselves in a situation with very mature fields. And I'm not even talking about oil, because as you will know that the barrels per day that we used to have 100,000 over that's long, long gone. Long, long gone. It's one guess I had the other day said it was 49,000 barrels per day because the amount of crude oil had gone down by 11%. So that is handled by Heritage, Exploration and Development Arm. So we so we have a refinery that has the capacity to refine. Well, maybe David could tell me better than I. But we refine from years now crude oil coming from other countries, which pay us to refine it, and then we sell it back to them. That's how we be making. That's how the refinery has morphed. So we have really not an crude oil producing economy. 55,000 barrels per day is about what we make. And by the way, when we say that, just to be clear, because I think sometimes we are not clear ourselves, that's what the company, through the exploration and development and so on, that's how much they get per day. But the revenue that the government gets is not 55,000 barrels multiplied by $80 per barrel. Even you go and check what's the price of a barrel of oil. Because remember, they're in business. It's the taxes that are applied. And for instance, one of the big one, when I say big, I mean very big in terms of capacity in nowadays, out of Canada, Touchstone, they get, the revenue we got, and the commission and the Minister of Finance did say that don't mix up gross domestic product, meaning all the goods and services we produce in a year, with the revenue the government gets, because the revenue is the taxes on those goods and services. Two different things. And it's that revenue that is used to run the country. And when we talk about revenue and we talk about deficit, it's not all those goods and services. It could be 300 million, but what's the revenue we get? What's the taxes we get? It might be 50 billion. 300 billion, but 50 billion. So today, we're going to be focusing on the energy sector because that is where we are still, and the Atlantic LNG is primary area, because I think I had a Dr. Justin Ramon a few months ago, and he made a good point. He said that most of the natural gas that we do monetize or have developed, most of it goes to the LNG sector. And he created that, I believe, is like taking your cocoa pods and sending it off to, well, maybe I'm saying this part, sending it off to Nestle's to make chocolate. Why didn't you take those cocoa pods and send it to the downstream industry and let them make chocolate? because you're making more money. But the arrangements we have here, Shell and I think Shell and BP are the major investors in the Atlantic LNG trains. And so at the end of the day, they take priority for the natural gas. And then it goes to the downstream industries, ammonia, methanol, etc. So we are an energy economy. There's no getting around that. So having said that, what is the impact of the recent elections held first in Venezuela? Well, out of all the gas fields, I think Dragon Field has far more natural gas than any other gas field. 4.3 trillion cubic feet or thereabouts. And we are short every day of over 1.1 billion cubic feet of natural gas. So we in a sad state. So Dragon Field has always been put front and center as what was going to save Trinidad and Tobago. The problem, of course, is Dragon Field. All of it is in Venezuelan waters. All of it is in Venezuela's waters. The other two major ones that they mention, I'm sure there are many others, but the other two that they do mention is the Lauren Manatee, which is what you call a cross-border. Most of it is in Venezuela, and only about 20-something% is in Trinidad. They did come to final investment decision, Shell, so they are going to monetize and develop and exploit the natural gas from the Manatee field, which is nothing compared to what Dragon Field promised, but it is better, much better. I shouldn't say much better than nothing, it's still, but look how long it has taken, or so it appears. Let me say also it appears, because a lot of things we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So all we heard about was Dragon Field, and that we were going to separate between Lauren and Manatee, and we were going to lose. But we never really heard much. But the fact that Shell made a final investment decision with Manatee had to mean they had reached a good way. Then we have I never can pronounce it correctly, Coquina Mankin, which is the BPTT. And they also have been, that's another cross-border gas field, partly in Venezuela and partly in our waters. So you're saying Dragon Field because they're deal right. Exactly that, Mr. Montano. You know that? And Mr. Montano, I have been saying that for quite a long time. And people would want to say, oh, she's a Debbie Downer. Oh, she doesn't want the ministers to succeed. Absolutely, absolutely not. That is absolutely not. I love my country. You think I want to suffer? You think I want my grandchildren to suffer? You think I want my children to suffer? You think I want so many of us to have to leave our country and go elsewhere and lose our Trinidadianness and hear that our great-grandparents were from a country called Trinidad? You think that's what we want? There's so much promise, so much ability in this country. I would not want it. The problem with the Dragon Field, and this is why the elections were so important. Let me start with why the elections were so important, and then I'm going to give you some quotations from persons who would be able to probably support what Mr. Montano. Very glad to have you on. Others, please come on. We'd love to have you on. And maybe he could go on and say why he feels so. I'll be happy to hear his point of view on it. But why is it so important? Well, first, before that, there was the Barbados Accord. Because the Barbados Accord, which was between the opposition and Maduro government, they agreed to carry out the elections, which was held on Sunday, free and fair, and respect oil prices. Yeah, but you see, oil doesn't matter, Mr. Montano. What you have to look at is the natural gas. Sorry if I'm talking to him, but you see, the oil really doesn't matter. I always wondered when I was minister, I said, but why are you worrying to put the crude oil price when we do have much crude oil? We are a natural gas economy. I don't know, through habit, but the one that really matters is natural gas. That is the one. That's the one you have to look at. And that's why he took 2.3 billion out of the consolidated fund to put it what to put it for? To bump up the revenue. So the deficit, the difference between the expenditure and the revenue wouldn't be as wide as it was going to be. It was already headed to 5 billion. and he says will be 9 billion. Maybe if he didn't take it at 2.3, it might be 11 billion. I don't know how it will end up in when we reach September, October, because I've been watching natural gas prices. Now I know you can't just go by that. I've spoken to people who work in energy sector and say it's not so straightforward. They have contracts beforehand, and a lot of their buyers are in the Asian market. So it's not, you just can't take that price and just use it. But in his own affidavit from the Minister of Finance, he did say as up to July, we were 335 per MMBTU. And when he put the price at $5, so you're going to just know that we're in trouble. You just know if you're running a business, you have to know you're in trouble. Have to know you're in trouble and they're not getting any better. Look where what we in August and they're not getting any better, right? For a number of reasons. So the elections were held, and this lady called Maria Machado, all the opposition forces, just like in Trinidad, some who centrist, some who leftist, some whatever you want to call us in Trinidad, but we can't agree. But one thing they agreed about is that they wanted Maduro out. Put aside all their differences, came together and said Maria Machado was their chosen one. When they chose her, the courts in Venezuela said that she could not take part in any national election because they accused her of treason, of being conspiring with Guaido and the Americans to bring down Maduro. So when they had the Barbados Accord, Barbados was where they had it, but it was the opposition and the government of Venezuela who agreed that they would comply with all electoral rules, etc. Or if they didn't, America would reimpose many of the sanctions that they had lifted and reverse it, which they did since April, right? So Maria Machado, they said, but you can go to the Supreme Court and let the Supreme Court hear your matter. Just like America has a Supreme Court that's loaded with Republican judges, and I love America, but they're the ones that said that as long as you're president, you did something while being president. I don't know how far that goes. I'm not going to try to interpret that unless I get myself in trouble. They're immune for prosecution. And it's loaded with Republican, it's no secret, Republican Supreme Court judges, and there's no retirement age on top of that. So at least in CCJ, it's 72. There's no retirement age. So if they said that the Supreme Court in Venezuela is loaded with supporters of Maduro, well, maybe people could say, well, could we not say the same thing about America? So what happened was she lost, and she could not contest. So they took this Gonzalez guy, almost like a proxy. And the way they do the elections in Venezuela, from my readings, so it's a moving target all the time. So while I'm talking, something new could be happening. It's done electronically. So they do the electronic voting. And what they have said, and the Associated Press, United States of America, Canada, a lot of the United States media houses have all come out and said that Maduro stole the elections. The elections were unfair. And the reason they say that they have verifiable evidence of that is that they said that they took from the election results, they compared what they call the ballot. There's a term that I had to write it down so I wouldn't forget to use the term correctly, but I guess I did not write it down well enough for me to remember it. But the ballot tickets. So that's the manual version of it. And they said they compared that with the electronic version. And when they compared that in 17 districts, and when they compared that, they found that I think it said 70% of the votes went to the opposition. The NEC, which is the equivalent National Elections Committee, which is like our EBC, had announced that Maduro had won by 55. He got 51% of the votes, and this coalition of oppositions got 44% of the votes, and they declared him the winner. And America, etc., have said that he stole the elections, and they said they have proof of it, and there has been total chaos in the streets of Venezuela since then. Some people dying. The army, as in the past, when they put Guaido and made him president, and he disappeared after a short while too. When Europe and America and Canada said that Guaido was the president of Venezuela, I have to laugh, because it's like us going and say December the 6th thing that happened, anything that happened down in Atlanta with the voting machines, those are not free and fair elections. And so we need to go inside there and fix up and deal with it. It comes something like that. But anyway, America has not gotten involved directly at all, but they definitely have made it clear that they do not support Maduro. And what has happened is that they're saying that this matter of who won the elections, who didn't, will have to come after trying to get elected. Or you will, God, if you don't mind seeing Albert writing here. Albert writing is me, but and I appreciate you, Albert. I mean, you tuning in. Tell other people to tune in. Yeah. So after they've said now that they want international organizations, I think Carter, something that does these things, oversight, to come in and to determine whether elections are free and fair. Maduro has put up a big fight against that, because what they're saying is you are interfering in our country's democracy. So why are we so? And before I go, it's like I feel like I'm keeping this sort of not secret, reaching this high point. But why are some of the countries taking a kind of a position that you're not quite sure what they're seeing, but you're kind of sure what they're seeing? Some of them are very much more outspoken about it. Well, certainly the chairman of CARICOM, this very young man, oh my God, he's so young, Dixon Mitchell, who also happens to be Prime Minister of Grenada and chairman of CARICOM, he has made it very clear that he says Venezuela, he says that is something for Venezuela to determine. It is their thing. It's for them to determine. I'm trying to get exact words that he used, but he basically said it's really not for us to make a determination about that. It is for the Venezuelans to do that. That, I think, is what his general view is. But you have had people like Dr. Gonzalez out of St. Vincent and Grenada, who have been far more outspoken and said some very, very, what would I say, some very, very emotive language, where he's Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, where he's quoted on August the 1st, which that's how long ago? Just 4 days ago, as saying he's the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and Grenada, and Grenadines and Grenada, sorry, my mistake. He said imperialism cannot lecture me on free and fair elections. They have clearly decided Venezuela's elections to be unfree and unfair. While not meddling, they're obsessed with every election in Venezuela. It is always unfair because it does not produce the results that they want. He said the challenges go to the Supreme Court. They say no Supreme Court is in his pocket. The foreigners have to do it. Dr. Rowley was far more subtle in his comments. I'll give him that. When asked about it, remember, there's Dragonfield and Maduro. And Dragonfield really is where the natural gas is. 4.3 trillion cubic feet of natural gas there. And Dr. Rowley said, speaking at a PNM function, I think on Friday last, he said there are people in Trinidad who came from Venezuela because they didn't like the last result. And I'm not surprised they're still here. But we have to be careful that we don't take advice from people whose agenda and interests are not the same as Trinidad and Tobago. We will maintain our position until there's reason to change it. This time, we are not without some interest in what goes on in Venezuela, but we play our role within the context of our understanding and confirmation of the rules and regulations that govern the people's internal elections. I think UAS had a meeting and Trinidad was not present at that meeting. So he has said, what he's basically saying is, as others have said, it's not even a CARICOM country. When I had CARICOM, Ghana had an issue. It is rightfully that we as CARICOM members should want to take an interest and be participatory in ensuring the freeness and fairness of the election without being meddling, but certainly we did, and Ghana's final court of appeal has been the CCJ for ever so long, so it was quite correct. But in the case of this election on Sunday, it has real implications for us. And, it depends on how you interpret that, because MP Lee took one view on it. I think I take the same view that the Prime Minister takes on it. But the view is this. One of the things we have to remember, all those licenses you're hearing about, that is good. But the license that is given is Venezuela giving us a license. Under what terms, I'm not quite sure. Some of it has been stated in the Gazette. But what I do know is that the license that Venezuela has given to Shell and NGC to exploit and develop and export their natural gas from the Dragon Field, how come none has reached? How come nothing has happened? How come Shell is not there? How come they're not doing anything? Right? Why nothing happening? And how long are you hearing that? Come on. I know it's even before this government, but even since this government, and even before this current Minister of Energy, who has devoted a lot of energy in this matter, but A for effort, and then there's something else for success. So, and I hope he's successful. But the point of the matter is, if America has its way, and is trying its best to have its way this time around, is that somehow enough maximum pressure, especially coming from the people, because in the last election there was a low turnout of voters, that there will be finally the downfall of Maduro. What does that mean to us? Well, if you're MP Lee, you would say that's a bad thing. Well, and I might say that too, because as other people have said, I think Mr. Parry, MP Parry, said a few years back, there's a lot of obscurity in relation to the Dragonfield deal. It's not transparent. What are the terms and conditions? We don't know. So I don't know what was agreed between the parties. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I can't say because we don't know much. But certainly there are question marks about how good it is for Trinidad. But Mr. Lee, MP Lee, took the view that if Maduro is defeated and is removed, then all those deals and negotiations that NGC and Shell had entered into with the Maduro government and PDSA will go by the wayside, and you will have to start all over again. And they have already said 2027. When they tell you 2027, look at 2020, it is more likely. They were getting it since 2025. So his view is that it may be that we're going to have to start all over again if Maduro is defeated, however the defeat comes about. The other point of view, which I more take, and I think most of the Caribbean islands take, and we certainly take, because we need the natural gas. We have we need 4.1 billion cubic feet of natural gas a day for our LNG and for the downstream. A lot of the downstream companies have mothballed or closed down because there's no gas. Nikwan, well, they had a whole set of problems, but part of them, so many problems was that they didn't have gas and was suing the government for not providing them with gas, and the government was suing them for not paying them the money. But everything's circling around natural gas. If you notice, the whole conversation is around natural gas. So if Maduro is able to maintain his position in Venezuela, I believe that is what many countries in the Caribbean and Trinidad would want. But the difficulty about that is, and therein lies, therein lies the problem. The problem is that Venezuela is seen as almost the arch enemy of America. Venezuela is awash. It has the largest supply of crude oil in the world. They have a lot of natural gas. They used to say Russia had the most natural gas, but now Ghana is in the running too. So that may be a good thing. But if Maduro succeeds in holding on as president, as much as America has, by whatever means, not directly, allegedly, put their best foot forward to see the end of Maduro in the last elections and were not successful, that's when they increase the number of sanctions, and that's the issue here. It's not the licenses, ladies and gentlemen. Licenses are good. Repsol, and they have been there for over 30 years with licenses from the Venezuelan government. They've been operating there over 30 years. Intyre out of Italy has been operating there with licenses given to them from the Venezuelan government. And if my reading is not incorrect, they are the ones, as Repsol, built the domestic LNG to provide them with domestic electricity. But they're also doing some exporting. Venezuela needs the money because these sanctions are that all the billions of US that are in the banks in America, I think you need a SWIFT code, but they can't access the money. They can't access the US. They are a whole set of things. And also a lot of companies will get blacklisted if they do business with PDVSA in Venezuela, unless America gives the okay. So the licenses, whilst they are a good thing, why is it Shell isn't in there? Why? Ask yourself why. Because the idea was that it's about 17 kilometers, I think, from the Dragon Field to what we call the Hibiscus Platform, which is in Trinidad waters. And that is owned by Shell. And once it reached there, then NGC owns all the pipelines. So NGC would then be able to transport the natural gas to Atlantic LNG and to the downstream industries. Why hasn't it happened? Yes, haven't you heard? And have you noticed that the minister don't take it personally? Because I don't take what you say to me personally, because it's not really worth it to me. I try to keep it above at a certain level. I don't know, and so I hope you could take it in the spirit in which it is being said. In spite of his efforts, I don't think you're hearing much about Dragonfield these days. No, I don't know something going on behind the scenes, but without America, nothing would happen. Why am I saying that? I've said it before, and that's why I'm telling you this election is so important, because clearly America does not feel the elections were free and fair. Clearly, America has already, I think, they announced it 2 days ago, their minister of, it's not a minister, but whatever is the correct terminology for the person who deals with state matters, he came out and said, Blinken came out and said that they recognize Gonzalez as the president of Venezuela about 2 days ago. They've come out and said that. So they're not pretending at all. And the reason is they're saying that the elections were not that the opposition won the elections. That's what they're saying. So the problem with that is that at the end of the day, if Maduro, who's been there for, this will be about his sixth term after Chavez. Maybe I'm wrong about his sixth term. Maybe I'm mixing up with another leader. I think I am. If Chavez is able to retain his position, what does OFAC mean? OFAC is the Office of Fixed Assets Control, that is the Treasury. They are the ones that determine which country or which company they will grant licenses to exploit, explore, develop, export oil and natural gas from Venezuela. They are the ones that take that decision, not the license from Venezuela to Trinidad, but OFAC license. And those licenses have not been for very long periods. They gave us one called General License 44, and I wrote all this down so I would try to remember it in any event. But I know originally what's the importance of the license. America's sanction, at least in the case of Venezuela, was to say that the kind of aid they would only give is humanitarian aid, so that countries could give in kind, but they could not pay for the natural gas or oil in cash, which is what Venezuela desperately needs. And what they did with Trinidad is the first one, which is the one with the dragon fee, which we talk about. Initially, when they gave us this general license, I'm trying to look for it, and I don't know why I can't find it, but I'm sure I'm going to find it. When originally they gave us the license, it was in, I think it was sometime in, it's not here. Anyway, originally gave us the license. It did not allow us to pay in cash for the natural gas. That was in October of the same year, 2024, or earlier in that same year. Yes, earlier in that same year. And then in October the 31st or 13th or 17th or something like that, they amended that and said, okay, we give you 2 years to go in with Shell, NGC, to go and develop, and we will allow you to pay for the natural gas from the Dragon field in cash. But you know how long that is? 2 years. You know when that coming to an end? Next year. And you know who did not do the final investment decision? That's what's necessary. The final investment decision from the biggest investor in that Dragon field deal is Shell. And Shell has gone on record and said that they will not sign the final investment decision with Dragon field unless OFAC gives them, I think they wanted 15 years, because they wanted certainty. They're dealing with Maduro, who is a mercurial character at best, and dealing with the fact that they are very vulnerable. They have their shareholders, and they have said they would not sign off on Dragon field unless they got that 15-year license assurance from OFAC. Clearly, OFAC did not give it to them, and they did not sign that fine. To date, as far as I'm aware, the minister is going to come out tomorrow with a piece of paper and show it. It won't be my fault if I didn't know. It just means that you just don't tell us. Okay? So, which is nothing new. So, if it is that you can, if what I'm saying is incorrect, it's because it has not been made public. But as far as I'm aware, Shell has not and will not sign off on that deal. It's not the license, it's OFAC. Okay? So the minister could talk all he wants to talk about how much license he get, how long license going to last. That's a good thing. But Venezuela giving license to plenty people too, because guess what Venezuela want? Money. They need cash to pay their bills. to be able to import food and medicine, etc. So the fact of the matter is that is the key OFAC. So the point I'm making here is this: if Maduro stays in office, do you think America is going to be happy about that? No. Do you think they're going to ease up on the sanctions that they have already put on Venezuela to put pressure on them to break them without fighting them with arms? No. They already drew away from the Barbados Accord. So it wasn't very long after they agreed to the Barbados Accord, which was a sign in Barbados between the opposition and Maduro. And shortly afterwards, they reversed that decision and reimposed a lot of the sanctions. Do you think that if Maduro is successful in staying in power, that we are going to get more, the government of America is going to help us to be able to get more, to be able to pay in cash for natural gas in Venezuela so that Venezuela can get out of much of its financial problems, especially when it is alleged that the DNC nominee, Kamala Harris, they said she has walked away, and they said she can at different times, from her previous position about shale gas, meaning that what she's showing is that America is prepared. America is one of the largest exporters of LNG, by the way, is prepared to extract hydrocarbons in different forms, maybe not coal, but certainly natural gas, which is the cleanest out of all of them, from America that does have it, because they have a huge pileup of inventories. So if it is Maduro is there, that is why our prime minister is concerned. And insofar as Mr. Dr. Raul Gonzalez is concerned, he had even more personal reasons. Because when they had the Petro-Caribe under Chavez in 2005, and he got 12 out of the 15 Caribbean countries to sign up, because he gave them the deals that he gave them, the things that he put in the deal. I mean, it'd be hard to say no to it. It was 2005. It allowed them payment of the crude oil at market rates 50-50 with grace periods of 2 years, 17 to 25-year financing agreements with 1% interest if oil prices were above $40 US. And I had 12 of the 15, but then I see I have 8. Anyway, joined Petro-Caribe. And Mr. Dr. Gonzalez, understandably, would one that is concerned about that deal, because he said in 2019, Petro-Caribe had almost dried up because of Venezuela eroded domestic production of refining oil. And it almost collapsed. And the U.S. sanctions against the countries made it impossible to route payments to Venezuela. You know that SWIFT code? You couldn't pay them. So in 2022, St. Vincent obtained a shipment from Venezuela under the Petro-Caribe. So you understand why countries in the Caribbean, and we especially with Dragon Field, are concerned about what will be the outcome of the Venezuelan elections, because it is still being hotly contested. They're still marching. And one of the reports I read, but I might not, things go so fast. But one of the reports that I had read was that the Supreme Court said, well, bring us the evidence. If you can bring us 15 tally sheets that show that the electronic version and the tally sheet version do not match up. I think that's what that's read. Then that would be evidence, but that the evidence has not been brought to us. And then the other part is that the machine that does the electronic collection of foods just so happened to have broken down. So that's why we have to be concerned about what's going on in Venezuela right now, because I think we have to believe what Mr. Montano is telling us about the Dragon Field. It's got to be a big seismic shift in the geopolitics to allow Trinidad to get that access and be able to pay and for Shell, because America's animus is, putting it lightly, towards Venezuela and its commitment to see the collapse of Maduro. There's no question of that. The other part of the equation would be, David, you find you real quiet. David, you there?
I'm listening to you. I'm listening to you. I'm following you all the way. And
Yeah,
you're
but
very much on point. Yeah.
I'm very much what?
On point.
Yeah, but I mean, people need to not feel that they can't contribute, because I mean, I am just a part of why I probably appear to be so current with issues is because that's what I do. I make my business to do that, I'm not going to come on here and not do my homework. And I try to look at Associated Press, I look at Bloomberg, I do look at Al Jazeera, I look at Reuters, and of course our own local media, many of them get their news indirectly from those very same sources, So the other part of the equation is, well, so we don't know what's going to happen with Maduro. Are they going to succeed in bringing him down? I do not know. He does not appear to be going anywhere fast soon. And that means that America is not going to be happy about that. And if America is not happy about that, they're not going to try to do anything to facilitate Venezuela having access to fiat or to currency, despite the fact that so many of these small Caribbean countries are suffering desperately because of climate change, and their major source of revenue is the tourism sector, and they are certainly not the cause of the industrial world. Dr. Ishran Ali, I was so proud of him. As an aside, he was being interviewed, and the person interviewing him was somebody from Europe, I expect, talking about climate change. And he said, I'm concerned about climate change. Ghana's contribution to climate change and heating and all of that, it must be 0.1%. Well, you should be glad is how much forest we have.
Yes.
You should be glad is how much forest we have. Is the industrial world caused the problem and you want us to come and solve it and try to make us part of the problem, which you caused, and then telling me, are we not concerned with the oil and gas? You weren't concerned before that when it was benefiting you. And look how much forest, how much forest and jungle we have. Thank God we're giving you oxygen. Anyway, he said something. I was really proud of him, Dr. Ali. I don't know you, but gosh, I really like you. You stand up to them. Yes, stand up to them. You don't let them intimidate you at all. This is a new word. You don't make enemies. I see the Prime Minister talk about reparation. Yes. I'm not going off point, but yes. And literally when I heard that, I said, maybe, but no. When slavery came to an end, do you know every slave master was paid compensation for losing a slave? Yes, it's in the British archives, because one of my sisters who was doing research on a book, someone led her to it, and she found it. And some of the names, which I can't remember the names, but some of these people, their family descendants, which you cannot blame them, they didn't do it, but their descendants are still living here, and they inherited a lot of land down the islands. They inherited a lot of land. I'm not a thing, but I'm saying they were compensated for losing me as a unit of labor. So when we say we should get pay reparations for making you wealthy, all the tea drinking, they don't make tea in England. The China that they drink the tea from is made in China. All the fine silks come out of India, so I mean, let's be real. Let's just be real. Let us be real, So when the argument about reparations, you have to decide how you will do it. You don't want to put money in people's hand and throw it and waste it. You want to do it in a way that is sustainable and help to develop an economy. So I just wanted to make that side point, because I heard the Prime Minister mention it in the Emancipation Day celebrations. And it is a valid point. Why is it okay to get compensation for me, a human being, for losing me as a unit of labor? And nothing wrong with that at all. And you know what I said? If you go any London Museum of Natural History,
Hmm.
and it took all it stole from all of these countries, India and the African countries and Asian countries, the museum would be almost bare.
Hmm.
There'll be nothing left. I don't see, no, they don't see that is not right. This is the most amazing thing. Anyway, apart from that, coming back to to the elections in America. Okay, so I could see a Maduro being removed as being in a way a good thing for us. I do not know what the conditions were that they got with Maduro, so let me put that in front. So I don't know if that is necessarily a good thing, but in the absence of knowing what was agreed to, it would mean that America would be happy. If America is happy, they would remove sanctions. If America removes sanctions, there are a lot of countries, they're building up the inventories, it is true, but they still need the natural gas as an energy source, which means that whoever is there instead of Maduro, if Gonzalez, would be someone who is, well, at least on good terms with America, and therefore would be more likely to remove a lot of these sanctions, and it would be to our benefit that those sanctions from OFAC are removed so that we would be able to have access with a good commercial arrangement to the natural gas in Dragon Feed. There's natural gas in the Lauren Manatee and the one that I can never pronounce well. But and there's natural gas elsewhere, but that would be a good thing from that point of view, if for us from that point of view. But it doesn't seem as though the prime minister is supportive of that. So I don't know, but just looking at it from the outside, it would seem to me that would be what America would want. And if that's what America wants, it would remove sanctions. If it removes sanctions, we would benefit from that. And we would be able to have big companies like Shell and so on would be willing to take more risk in doing business um, in Venezuela, and it would benefit us at the end of the day.
Now,
Um,
seeing that there's still this a lot of unrest in Venezuela based on the results that Maduro claims that he is the victor. Um, the National Electoral Council of Venezuela, which is equivalent to the ABC in Trinidad and Tobago, they have not substantiated the results as yet. And I guess that is what created all the problems. But should, in case the government should change in Venezuela, let's say that it is realized that Maduro did not win the election and that the opposing factions that came together are declared winners. What will be the wherewithal for Trinidad and Tobago, where we have signed on to this 20-year deal and stuff? Do you think there'll be a change? Can you foresee a change, or do you think there'll be a change in the agreements, or will we have to start all over again?
well, it seems as people have, and I think MP Lee has already made that comment, because what it is that you didn't, you dealt with a company,
Hmm.
and well, it's a government-owned company, and the negotiators might say these terms and conditions are unfair. But I can't. So to answer your question, that's a great possibility that and of course that pushes back the timeline for us and the need for the natural gas. We are really in a serious position. I don't know if you, who I hope to have on, but um, let me not go in it too much on it. But I mean, let's just say, I mean, look at the foreign exchange reserves position. Most of it is loans, because those bonds are loans,
Yeah.
and they are US and in US currency. And then you're taking money out of the HSF, which is held in US currency, and putting it in the consolidated fund, which is this one big fund into which all revenues are placed and then transferred into the various HSF, IDF, and then to the various ministries, but all goes in there. You know what I mean? So I mean, Trinidad is in a serious situation. I mean, I think one of the indicators to me was with the media review. I mean, two things. Well, and this is Sajo and Ali, Miss Sajo and Ali said this about the foreign exchange. We don't have it. It's just it's a pretense. Because if I tell you I have $500,000 in my savings account, but 400,000 of that is debt that I have to pay, how much I really have?
Hmm.
And that is the position. Why are you taking money out of the HSF, put it in a consolidated fund, so then you may be transferring it to the central bank for to buff up? Because all of a sudden, in 2 months, it was going down, 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 down. And all of a sudden, I think in his last month, it bumped up 500 million US. Where did that come from?
Hmm.
That didn't come from oil and gas. I mean, I don't work in any of those entities, but I have to assume that went from the HSF to consolidated to the foreign exchange reserves, because it's looking man. When you are a investor, you going to look at, why you looking at the foreign exchange reserve? To see if you could pay back my money,
Hmm.
If I lend you money, I want to know that you have money to pay me back. And to a large extent, I think the government has relied on the HSF, because and even that, I mean, it should be in a much better position if they hadn't taken on money 3 times with COVID, and then just the other day take it out again. Took out nearly $1 billion TT, you know. And anytime you see that type of thing, is desperation and going on. You don't know that's desperation. It have to be desperation. And one of the things that really spoke to that, and Sajwan said it, the credit card. See, people can't get money and they go in the bank. They can't get money. Well, some people can get. And what? I feel a lot of the money, I wish somebody had the ability to do an analysis and get the data, and a really independent body to see how much of that foreign exchange, one, is used for retail. Because if it's retail, it means it's not earning foreign exchange for you. You're using up your foreign exchange in a lot of those fast food franchises or elsewhere, the food and beverage. You're using it up, but you're not making any money out of it. We don't export. We, you're not making money from it. So how much of that foreign exchange that is set aside is being used for retail business, whether it's a car, sometimes we have to take a little hardship to get to where we need to get to. So how much is for that? And how much of it, all of it, is for true manufacturing? And I'm not talking about because I know they added the energy sector to the manufacturing. No, I know when they did the central bank did their monetary report, they did make a distinction between non-energy and manufacturing. So they do not include the downstream industries. But still, as one economist told me, that only represents about 6% of all the goods and services produced in a year. But how much of those goods and services, which is retail, food and drink, how much of the input is imported, but it is the packaging is imported to produce those things? And more importantly, how is it earning any foreign exchange for us? And also, when they think so much money, there's a lot of capital flight, and also those jobs are low-paying jobs. One of the things behind the TTIFC, hi, Mr. Prasad, I'm good to have you on, and I want more of you to join us.
Mm-hmm.
The What I was saying is, one of the things that the TTIFC, which we were very far advanced, we'd gone to Dubai twice. I had talked with the Crown Prince brother, who's in charge of the United Arab Emirates. They took me to where they have section of the part that is Dubai, that is the business. Their business is done in English. The law is English law. We have it's lawyers, accountants. We have so many people who have gone to private institutions, Arthur Lockjack, UE thing. We have lots of people who are well qualified in all the different fields that are high end. And the idea was to produce people who had high end qualifications to be able to work in our equivalent of a Dubai. And that never came to pass. And I was seeing on one of the television stations that I was almost saying this is like a mirror of Trinidad, two countries in Africa, where they were talking about how the young people were so educated, but there were no jobs for them. You can't educate people without having a plan to where you're going to put them. So the TTIFC, people don't know, but the gentleman who worked with, but I don't want to name the accounting firms because one of the big accounting firms, I don't want to get the wrong one, but one of the big accounting firms, he had worked as a consultant for them. He was in Trinidad. He used to sit down right there in my office in a little cubicle, and he was drafting the law. He was literally drafting the law for the TTIFC. We had already appointed a board. The board was already working. We already had plans to open up a proper TTIFC so that all of these people that we wanted to turn Trinidad into a knowledge economy, and to keep up the AI intelligence, all of that, we were taking the steps to make sure that when the TTIFC, which is those two buildings where they are now used for the parliament, that was going to be the startup. But we were going to use and have a helipad or whatever. I don't go into all the things, but we had the educated people, we had political, the country may have crime, but we don't have political instability in our country. The language of commerce is English, and we have lawyers card done. We have accountants. We have people who are highly qualified in all the fields that deal with artificial intelligence and et cetera, et cetera. And so we were preparing for this revolution. We were preparing for this revolution where we would do what Dubai did, because what Dubai did was what they call the herd mentality. They got one of the biggest financial companies in the world. It's in front of my face, but I can't remember it now. To come to Dubai, they probably, sweetened the deal to get them to come. And once they came, others came. Others came in groups, and that was a start. And then Dubai was able to develop a fantastic tourism industry, and that was the plan. And that was the plan. So when people look and see so many young people now who have degrees, which really are not going to help them, although I saw the tutor head say that we need more teachers, but people who want other avenues in professional qualifications, we were preparing Trinidad for that and preparing the TTIC. We were going to focus on Central and Latin America because we're right there at the mouth of Latin America. And we had the education, we pushed education so much. People may say we're not that thing, but we did a lot of work. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I know we did a lot. And that was in 2010. I can't speak for after when we left, but that was what was happening. And we actually were drafting the legislation. I can remember the gentleman sitting there and going through the legislation and deciding who would be in charge. Would it be the governor of the central bank? All of those things that we were looking at. Were we going to have a helipad so they didn't have to go through traffic? Were we going to use the old airport as the kind of VIP airport, as we did for the Commonwealth things? And one of our politicians, best, they always have the doubting numbers. I always want to throw cold water in your idea. So when I wrote an article about it, she was able to say everything that was wrong with it. But guess what? In Ireland, they have, well, he got himself in trouble in the end. But in Ireland, the person they credited for Ireland being able to bring back all its young people and to have their version of our financial center was this one man who would not give up on that dream. You just did. So, there's so much opportunity for Trinidad. So let me just end, because I went off on a tangent, but I hope the things that I say are helpful. So it's also to tell people that we weren't not planning the 2020 vision. There was a plan. different aspects of it. And one of it was moving from a service economy to a knowledge economy and to ramp it up as fast as you could, but at the same time ensure that there were high paid jobs. What do we have? A set of young, poor people living in certain urban thing, like the worst off than they were 20 years ago, because like there's nowhere for them to go. But that was not the plan for them. That was not the plan for them.
Now, there's a fallout. Let me just say, quote and unquote, fallout of the arrangements that we have now as a deal or deals that we are hoping to negotiate with the Venezuelan government, whoever it may be in power. What has been said is that we don't have enough natural gas to take us much further down the road. Now, should in case this thing should blow up in Venezuela where there's big unrest and everything comes to a halt, because sometimes this political infighting can go for years and years and years. They have given us some years down the road where this will be completed. We have been told by the Minister of Energy that
Wait, wait,
nothing is going to happen. That we're on the right track, and But I'm thinking about it. If there's a deficiency in the production in our local um, locally, let me just say locally, that we are not producing enough and we are dependent on what's going to happen in Venezuela. I mean, there have been a lot of changes where the use of natural gas is concerned. I mean, where the man on the ground, or like Denise used to say, the man in the maxi taxi will know that there has been a significant increase of vehicle owners who have made the transition from gasoline to CNG. I mean, sometimes when you go to these fuel stations, you would see long lines of vehicles who have made the transition from the fossil fuel gas, if I should put it like that, to CNG. Now
what is CNG? What is CNG though?
that's the fuel that they use in most of the.
But it's a hydrocarbon, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is.
Mm.
But what I'm saying is, it has been proven that it's a lot cleaner than the gasoline itself, where emissions are concerned, a lot of that. But what I'm saying is that the amount of people who have made that transition because it was advised by the government that it will be, a kind of green way of moving to get away from the fossil emission of gasoline per se and like diesel and stuff like that. But what I'm saying is that I have realized there's a significant increase in the people who have gone that way. Now, if manufacturing should be demanding this amount of natural gas use and electricity, we don't have hydroelectricity here. That takes a big chunk of natural gas also. Um, what would you say you can foresee for the future as the deficiency of that natural gas to impact on the country where those kind of instances are concerned?
Well, it's not true to say that's just Dragonfield. Dragonfield was the big one and was touted, and to some extent, it was the biggest, and it was center stage, so that we tended to only focus on it. But there was also Laurel Manatee, and Shell did sign a final investment decision with regard to the Manatee, which about 20% of that natural gas is in our waters. So we do have the Manatee. There's also the one that I always mispronounce, and which is the BPTT, which they got a 20-year license, I think, from Venezuela. And I also think they also have similar terms that apply to Dragonfield with the 2-year things. And there's also in Tobago off the northeast coast, there's natural gas. And of course, we have Guyana, which is awash with natural gas, which is why Venezuela and is fighting, this whole arbitral award issue is taking up so much time. So I don't want, and there are other, I think what would be best to say, and I don't want to say that I am misleading anybody or anything. So I think that the and they did say that you would not get the maximum amount of natural gas from any of them in the first 1 year or 2 years. It takes time to ramp up,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
definitely natural gas has not gone away. Even the electric cars, I don't know if you're following what's been happening in the China. China has been making electric cars, and because they're giving Europe such a run for their money, and they're also producing high-end cars, electric cars, they have added on to their duties or whatever they call it. What if it was 7%? They've added on in some cases like 17%, 20%, all in an attempt to destroy the electric car not business. It's more than that. It's a huge undertaking in China. But all of these electric cars need electricity, and
Mm-hmm.
all and the electricity is natural gas. When I was in Barbados, very early on, I had a friend who had an electric car, and she would charge her car and she'd plug it in. But what is she using? She's using the natural gas, electricity from the natural gas. Now, when she had to drive the car, she was using electricity that had been to run the car, but to get that electricity, it came from the natural gas. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the things people have said, and this was a plan in any event, was the solar panel, because I think under our laws, that the first recipient of electricity must be the domestic user, must be the homes. It mustn't be the commercial ventures. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
what I think they were trying to do, following your argument of the diesel, what they were trying to do is set up a solar panel farm. And I think Shell, since 2018, was supposed to be behind that. And
Mm-hmm.
so that generate electricity from the solar panel farms. They have them in where when I used to live in Barbados as a student. The electricity was from solar panels. They use solar panels years now, and I think they intended to divert the electricity, natural gas electricity, from the domestic use for commercial use and replace it with the solar panel. But nothing has come of that. So to answer your question, when you are a minister, when you're in government, obviously your job is not to be a doomsday, because certainly you do not want, if you lose faith, then what do you leave for the rest of the country? They
Mm-hmm.
lose hope.
Mm-hmm.
And if they lose hope, they stop making an effort. It's a natural condition. My problem is that there's lack of transparency, the usual words, but they have meaning. And so sometimes it leads people to come to their own conclusions. The CNG has been around for when I was long time ago. Even before I was there, they were talking about getting more and more of the gas stations to carry CNG so that people could, and they are using it more, but it's still a form of a hydrocarbon fuel. So the future, the Minister of Energy, you see the problem. I don't know, Minister of Energy best able to answer the question. What I do know though, or what I suspect though, is that Dragonfield thing is not on anytime soon because of all these complications, and some of which we don't even know, because I don't even think that Maduro is an easy player to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And America certainly not going to lie down and play dead with that. But there is the manatee, and there is the other coquina, mankind or something, which BPTT has, and then there are other avenues for natural gas. Getting it is going to cost us more, to get the gas to our pipelines. I think that's the challenge, because I think the one with Manatee is on the southeast coast,
Yeah.
and most of the LNG plant is on the Point Fortin side on the west coast,
Mm-hmm.
southwest coast. So there are all kinds of complications. But let me just end with this part before saying that why the American elections will be also be important. But we know why the Jamaica financial elections could be the outcome, the final decision could affect us in terms of especially even the Lauren Manatee, 72% of the natural gas is in Venezuela, and it's billions and billions of cubic feet. So
Yeah.
the Lauren is very important to us too.
Mhm.
But who is going to be president? They're doing it. All the polls are showing it's a neck to neck tie,
Mhm.
with two of them.
Mhm.
And if Trump were to win, he was much harsher with these non-Norwegian, non-Swedish countries. And I think that he has a particular point of view of world affairs and foreign affairs where it may be different from how most of us would look at it. And I don't know if he were to win, if that would be a good thing for us. I think a combination of a Trump. I have nothing against Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump, if you're president, he'll Mr. President. But if Mr. Trump were to win, and if Maduro was able to keep his position there, I think Trinidad is going to really be the loser in that, because we are going to be a casualty or the proxy of a war, so to speak, between Venezuela, which not only wants to have, they want their sphere of interest. It's all geopolitics. It's not straightforward and simple,
Mhm.
right? So we will be, I think, the casualty of that should Trump win and should Maduro stay in place. If Maduro is removed and they get someone who's more to the liking of American politics, that on the face of it could be good for us, depending on what the terms and that were negotiated, whether they can stand up or whether they can't, and that's another delay. And then if Harris wins, she has already had to walk back on a number of things that she had said, but she has Caribbean roots, so maybe she will have that empathy for us in a way. Others may not. So I don't know. But what I do know, and what I did want to speak about today, is what we are seeing: two elections that are not happening in our country, but impact us in such a significant way, because to date, our revenue has been highly dependent on the energy sector, and we are seeing the impact of the loss of revenue, where they've cut your foreign exchange ability to take a foreign exchange from your card at all the banks. They're cutting it there. You're having the minister floating bonds left, right, and center. That is raising money and then putting it in the foreign exchange to make the foreign exchange look better than it really is. According to all the economists, say if you really took away all the what we owe, you probably end up with about 200 million there. You know, of course, if you haven't paid back your loans, right? And so we are facing a difficult time, and I don't expect we'll get out of it in a hurry, because of the failure, and I say it is a failure, to look in a very meaningful way at other ways of providing export opportunities in foreign exchange, and to give people at the lower end of the income bracket an opportunity to make, even if they can't export, and not do enough to export, sufficiently enough to be able to contribute maybe to taxes or take care of their family and not be so dependent on the state to assist them in their life, so that money can be redirected to education and things that will really help to build the country.
But that will also impact on small and micro entrepreneurs who are trying to access foreign exchange to operate their businesses. I
That's
think that is
exactly.
already impacting on them.
That's what she said. That is one of the things that she said. And the thing about it is, even the bureaucracy is another way of, people, another way of frustrating you, because if I have to go through 10 steps to be able to open up a business, and I am the little small man with no connections, with
Mhm.
much less money to pay for the connections. I'm not
Yeah.
saying to do that, but I'm just saying theoretically,
Yeah.
it would be as Jamaica did. Jamaica cut out a whole set of steps. And I think Tim Smith was explaining when it came to the landowners, land tenants association, what Jamaica did in order to deal with the backlog of land ownership issues where people can't produce titles. They just handed down the land to the nene and nana and everybody, and they set up, he can better explain it. The point is that there are solutions and they're simple solutions, but the more you make it bureaucratic and the more you put more and more steps in order to achieve it, it's more and more that only those who are at the top end of the food chain benefit, and those who are at the end will never. And it would not be something so direct to say, but look, I give you a chance. I told you come and apply for this. It's just like just like those fishermen saying they're telling us we're getting money, but when you read all the requirements, they might as well tell you you're not getting the money. But they could tell you that yes, we gave them a form and they could fill it out. There are all different ways of wanting to help people.
Yeah, because even registration of businesses and NGOs and things, there's a lot of bureaucracy there. I mean, I can tell you from experience. I've been trying to get a registration for the Liberal Pitch Lake tour guides, and a lot of red tape. I mean, like spinning in circles. And after a long wait of almost a year plus, it's closing in 2 years now, we are trying to get that registration. Imagine that. And time lapsed. When I thought I had it all in place and all of that, when I was like getting fed up, so I went there myself. I went to the NPO office, and they told me that it's 45 days you have to complete this thing. But we've been given the run around so much times that whenever I go, because I'm the one who's trying my utmost to get this thing done, and they said, okay, you reach a step here, okay, now we needed to do this. So I said, why don't you give me a list of the requirements? Like, no. So I will bring all together, and within that period, the 45 days lapsed. Now they're telling me I have to go all over again. Well, that got me very tired.
But that's the intention, you see.
Yeah, like,
that's the intention. That is the intention. That's it. And then they will say you don't have ambition. And they say that's why you're down where you are, because you're lazy, you don't want to do anything to improve yourself. But you see, unless you getting rid of all those, that is what the IMF did. And they had a special arrangement with Jamaica. It was not the usual type of arrangement. Yeah. One, because the people, not just the government, the opposition, everybody said enough is enough. Number one. Number two, there was not no top-down thing. It was they did it as a partnership arrangement, and it was, many of the steps were very, very successful. For example, opening up a company, 3 days, they were able to make, and because they removed a lot of the red tape. Why do we need this? Why do we need that? Cut it out. But you see, why you need it is, one is a handover from colonial times. That may be partly it, but a lot of it is, the more steps you have to go through is the more that, you might get frustrated enough. And 2, 3, it allows those who don't need to do that because they have the wherewithal to get it on their desk the next day. And then it comes out as though, well, you had a chance to open this business and look how long you sit down on the business, and that's the story. So when I talk about helping those and everything, don't just mouth the words and set up different companies and different this, and don't do that. And that is a thing. That's A. That is, what it is? A for effort. It's not A for effort. That's pretending. That's a lot of optics. When I see real results, don't just bring out 1 or 2 persons as being the poster boy or poster girl. But when I see you could give me data results showing me this is the thing and this was the result thing. Not everybody's going to be a success story, but when we start seeing that, and then you are then going and doing the research to find out what were the stumbling blocks, what were the things, and then cut them out. But you see, some people don't want you to cut it out, because when you cut it out, you're making the playing field too even, and we don't want it even. We want it as high as the Laventil Mountains are.
Mhm, mhm. Because the effort is to sort of enhance the tourist attraction for the area. I mean, I went on a foodie tour to the cocoa manufacturers up there in Grand Riviere, and I mean, I'm not going to say what was told to me, but they're under the same kind of impression that it's so bureaucratic to have things set up for for the expansion of their cocoa manufacturing. I saw it for my own self. The guy gave me a little tour. I was pulled away. Well, I had an interview with them on the radio already. So when I got there, it was three maxi loads of us in this foodie tour, and I was taken into the little factory that they have, and it's really a little factory. How can they mass produce to enhance the economy of the area, and by extension to get a lot of young people on board? It's not attractive enough for the young people to come on board if it is to be in that state. So when you think of, there was so much talk about diversification, and the dependency still is on this oil and gas thing, or this gas thing, and there's no effort. Um, I can see no effort is being made to move away some of these bureaucratic principles and rules and red tape and all of that, to make it easier and to facilitate entities like the Cocoa people that I went to, and even what I'm trying to do at the Pitch Lake in Lebre. I've reached a real fed up stage, and I told them, look, I think I'm done with this thing.
I think that's the general idea. That's what's supposed to happen. Frustrate you into giving up. But I,
Yeah,
I went to the chocolate one too in Tuku,
yeah,
and it was more like a cottage industry
yes,
business,
yeah,
and this is why there's so much that can be done in terms of the not only production thing. There are a lot of other things. But I did visit myself,
hmm,
and they did take us on a tour. But what has to happen if we are going to get serious about tourism? It has to have a holistic approach. It cannot be this ad hoc approach, and it has to come first and foremost from the government, and the government has to set it out in a clear way that
yeah,
people see the different components of what our tourist industry is. Because the starting point is, if I could say, what you do is just SWOT analysis:
yeah,
strength, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats. What makes Trinidad different from the other islands that people would visit
mhm,
nearby? What makes us different? We know what we have. We have so much, but there is no one, a cog in the wheel. There's no one centerpiece that is now pulling all these strands together and dividing it up in and creating a holistic and then selling it in the market. It's not done. So your effort, your effort, your effort, your effort, your effort, your effort. Look, we had Americans on. You told me you never heard about you hadn't
yeah,
heard about Americans.
yeah.
Knowing people heard about Americans,
Hmm.
people in Paramin, they don't come down for carnival. They spend all their carnival up in in
Pardon
Paramin.
me. Yeah,
Right? The
yeah,
whole story of Paramin needs to be told. The
yes.
Temple by the Sea. I don't know if you've ever heard the story, but it's a fantastic story.
It is a fantastic story.
There's so many. And then there's the Spring Festival,
Mhm.
which we celebrate. What is it called? With the Abir, and they take the Abir, and
Yes.
the big opening of spring. And
Mhm.
then you have the Jose, then you
Yeah.
have Diwali, then
Mhm.
you have Christmas.
Mhm.
It's not just a one day thing. Diwali is not one day. It's a whole thing. There's so much that can be done.
Yeah.
We are sitting on a gold mine to earn foreign exchange, because when these people come, they come in with US dollars,
Mhm.
euro dollars, and
Yeah.
pound sterling. And that's what we want. And
Mhm.
what they're coming for is a cultural experience. And then Tobago is not backward at all. They call it is something and heritage. I love that,
Yeah.
Alani heritage. So they
Yeah.
will do um, uh, traditional wedding, Tobagonian wedding, and
Mm-hmm.
then they have the Blue Food Festival.
Yeah.
But you see what has not been done. Some bodies, and we are talking about proven track records, not
Mm-hmm.
your friend, not the person you like, not the person who would think, but people with a proven track record in this thing you call the creative. You have to decide to package it and give it a name. You can't be all helter skelter. You can
Mm-hmm.
have other things growing out of it, but you have to have. It's like Dubai. Dubai didn't start as a tourism sector. It did not, but it grew and grew, and now it's one of the major tourism sectors in the world. But that's not how it started. So you have to have a starting point,
Mm-hmm.
pull together that starting point with the strengths you have, carnival, steel band, everything that we have, and really focus on that, build it out, 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 and then you add all the other pieces along the way. And the best of both worlds, Trinidad and Tobago.
Mm-hmm. Because I think that with the problems we are facing with earning foreign exchange, I when I think about the hard work I have put into, trying to get some kind of audience with the people who are in charge, where the development of the pitch lake is concerned. I mean, I have a list of ideas that I shared some of them, and they thought about, oh, that's fantastic, Mr. McIntyre, and all of that. But that's where it started, and that's where it ended. you know.
And that is the story. That's so much the story of Trinidad. I'm sorry to say, and that is why, and I mean no disrespect or any, you know, I'm not doing that at all. You
Mhm.
know, the fact is people lose confidence and faith because so many things are promised with such vehemence, with such,
Mhm.
the level that you really say, yes, yes, this thing is going to happen,
Yeah.
and year in, year out, year in, year out. And and not taking responsibility. Now I understand you are the government, and if I were in the government, you're certainly not going to stand up there and say we are failures. You're not going to do that.
Mhm.
But oh my God, you're going to make sure you have 3 or 4 real success stories, and people will understand because you have real success stories, and there's much has to be done with the corruption issue in this country. The level of corruption in this country, or the perception, which is real, the perception of corruption is so, so, so high. I read somebody said this, and I was glad. Can't remember. Maybe it was a letter to the editor, but the person said what I have always felt. When people try to make a distinction between white collar crime and the crime that you see with the guns and so on, they're both related. The guys who have those guns, where did they get it from? Is
Mhm.
it people who running the business? What business thing they're running?
Mhm.
What thing they're selling?
Mhm.
Right? So somebody has to carry out, and then eventually these people form themselves into groups called gangs,
Mhm.
and they have to have an everyday living. It's they can't just they can't commit a murder a day. I'm not funny. It's not funny. They can't commit a murder a day, so they have to survive, right? And they don't feel any way about it because the boss man is the number one gangster.
Mhm.
He's the number one gangster. And that's how it is. So, what the government needs to do, if they're really serious, and I know they're not serious because they're not going to do it because they cannot, for whatever reason, they cannot afford to do it. You read that how you want to read that. But
You
if
know,
they want to do it,
yeah.
they would bring in, they could clean this up in two tools with the assistance of the Americans. Don't tell me you spoke to this thing and that. You really had the political will to
Mhm.
deal with the cause. It might take you 6 months, 7 months, with a whole generation at a spoiler. But if you have the political will and you're serious, you will all these things, the educate, all of these things add to the problem. But unless you solve the main problem, you are spinning top in mud. And they know that. They know that. Everybody knows that. You speak to anybody who talking to you quietly and you speak to them quiet. Does everybody know what's the problem in Trinidad? Everybody studied the same answer. How the police know? How the government don't know? But the whole country know. And that's why they don't have no respect. And I'm sorry for a lot of policemen who are decent, honest policemen. And they are decent policemen. They are decent people who are in the protective services. But Peter pays for Paul, right? And the problem is that the lack of trust that has been promulgated over the last, especially it's been there since the 80s. I think the 80s was the starting point, according to boom started. It just happened at the same.
Well, you are freezing up on me. The thing about it is the effort that some people are putting into these community entities or community tourism entities. I think the bureaucracy and the red tape should be, they should make it easier
It's
for
time
us.
for us to come. No, it's time. The show is nearly finished. I was just saying that everybody who wants to know, who not the thing, all know what the problem is. All of us know it. The government knows it, but they talk about everything else. But what everybody knows is the answer. Everybody knows the answer.
Yeah.
And that is why there's that lack of trust, and that's why corruption can prevail as it does in this country, because people believe that the remedies, the prescriptions that are necessary to really, really get it and it requires political will, and it will require the intervention of a foreign assistance, not in a piecemeal way, in a real way. And I bet you in 3 weeks, you saw they deal with Grenada and clean up Grenada and problems. I remember, just as a last point, this man coming in the airport from Grenada, which Regan called Grenada. Anyhow, yeah, they call it Grenada. This man's coming in, but obviously he didn't like the Americans, He obviously was not a fan of Americans. And I also think he didn't too care that the Americans came in this country, to be honest. So they were interviewing him. He said, when a man is drowning, he doesn't care who saves him. So for Trinidad and Tobago, we need to be saved. And if it means we have to make a little sacrifice in order to save it, then we got to do it. We won't be the first country, and we won't be the last.
Yeah. But what enables or what makes the youth gravitate to these things is because there are no facilitation and no opportunities being offered. I mean, like in my instance, I've approached a lot of sponsors who are willing to come on board, and just because of that registration certificate that is, so elusive, we are stuck at one spot, and it's almost 2 years now.
Well, that's the whole thing, It's, as I said, there has to be the political will, and you need the political will. That's what I would say, And if you have the political will to have things done, because there are a lot of good public servants. I had a lot of good public servants working with me. I had very good permanent secretaries. I mean, my permanent secretary was about one of the best. She didn't used to make joke. She didn't care who you were, PNM, whatever her personal views were. She was to make it very clear to you that she was about the country. She didn't make joke at all, And
Right.
she was an excellent permanent secretary. I also had some excellent deputies. I didn't say all, but most of them were. And I had very, very good staff. So I have to say that my experience in government, in the Ministry of Finance, with the Prime Minister, giving me guidance, not instructions, never instructions, but guidance. I mean, he gave me my workload and told me what he expected me to achieve in the ministry, and that's a different thing. The FIA, a number of things, and then CLF came in the middle of it all things came crashing down, but that's a whole story by itself. But I had my workload set out for me, and I understood my workload, and I had good staff. I had a good relationship I think anyhow. I think I had a good relationship with my staff, and I had a good relationship with my permanent secretaries, and I think I got the support from them. And so I think I was able to achieve a lot in a short half a term that I was there, and it had a lot to do with the support that I got and dedication I got. And I suppose, like in anything where people see that you're respectful of them and you treat them with dignity and you working hard, and I guess hopefully you set a good example and you have the right people. And I could tell you that with the right leadership in any organization and the right people, which you have some power to determine who they are, you have a winning team. You're going to have some challenges and so on, but you will be able to achieve a lot, because in that little mirror of time, I could not have achieved whatever I achieved, even dealing with CLF and CIB and all the other things that were not part of the plan for 2009. It was still a very rewarding experience. And I would say, finally, as before, as we go, I suppose people will say how I've always remained so loyal to Mr. Manning. You never could buy loyalty. It's not for sale. And my loyalty is not just built on, it's built on one thing. He gave me no reason not to not be loyal to him. And I did see, especially to the later years, and even after I left government, I really could see for myself the level of dedication he had for the country. And without him, we would not have had natural gas. Just remember that. All whoever want to boast and say anything, not the LNG came because of Mr. Manning. Just remember that. That's what saved this country. And he has never been given the credit for that. He made mistakes. Yes, he did. But you have to give credit where credit is due. And he devoted his life to this country. That was my view. And, we need leaders like that.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's been a fantastic program. And I look forward to next Monday.
Yes, we're working on it, and I hope it'll be very exciting. You won't just see my face. And just say, Mr. Montano, thank you for joining us. I really am happy to have you on. Mr. Bernard Pustad, hope you don't mind me calling out your name. I'm happy you're with us, and we just hope that you can encourage more people from Facebook, etc., to join us in the evening and give us questions, and we'll be happy to answer them, even if it's not what's on the topic of the day. And see you next Monday. Bye-bye.
Thank you so very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's it for today's edition of Hard Talk with Karen Nunez Tesheira. Karen will be back with us next Monday at Power 102 Digital.